Well, thank you, Minerva, and thank you, Jota, for your wonderful presentations. Minerva and Jota are part of the inaugural exhibition of Sur Gallery, which is curated by Tamara Toledo and is in exhibition at the Sur Gallery, which is at 39 Queens Quay East. So you can see the work by Minerva and Jota there, and also work by other artists, from Latin America, very important artists who have been gathered there under the title Sportsmanship Under Surveillance. So I think that there's not much time kept, so I think that I will just open the floor for questions to Minerva and Jota. So you are welcome to ask questions or to express comments about their presentations.
Thank you to both of you for sharing your work. It's really quite amazing to see, on the one hand, a practice that is very socially engaged, and another one that is extremely political in its nature. I was curious, Minerva, because I have seen this definition of social practice in which, you know, or socially engaged art practice, which defines it as a kind of force that attempts to lever or like attempts to get some power from the institutions that present contemporary art. They try to occupy these institutions and lever some power from them. And I think that your practice is kind of like that. There is a really strong directive to actually effect a change or do something in actuality in people's lives. Can you speak about that in your practice?
I think I would use any medium available, any space available to just generate this kind of translation from social issues into aesthetic processes, or I think the aim is to generate these kind of situations that are only possible in the art field. I think that's why I'm an artist, and I find problematic that the term activist, or even the whole issue relating art and activism, because I think at the end it's just being aware of our own agency and responding and taking a political position and showing it. No? And that's why I ended up with the slide by Leopoldo Mendes, because him being a very, let's say, academic artist, no, working with engraving, he was so aware of him being this political person, but also that his work was the tool to activate this agency. That for me, it's clear that in terms of any intellectual practice, we are in that same situation, no? I think, I don't know, in Mexico, it's now strange how everybody's questioning political art and if it's effective or not and what we should do. And I think that kind of criticism responds to the context and how also some artistic elements or this kind of visual creativity has been more present in, let's say, public demonstrations. But for me it's strange because it's something that has existed forever in art, or as part of these public demonstrations, no? Especially when we talk about Mexican culture, it's so visual, and even don't know, like some demonstrations feel more a celebration than a protest, no? So yeah, I find it difficult to generate these kind of classifications when we talk about art practices. In my case, I think it's still conceptual art. But yeah, I know what you mean when you talk about these concepts, and I think there is also a lot to study and don't know, like think about. No, it's very valid reflection.
Minerva, but however, regarding what you said, I think that there's a difference between what you do and what the Mendes did, which is the issue of representation and the issue of real action. So what is very attractive to me about your work is that you stay within the art circuit, but at the same time you create things, name them artworks or tools or whatever, that can be used with a social critical function and in out of the art milieu. For example, I mean, I have here my student card created by Minerva at the Sur Gallery. So by the way, you can go there and you can get your own too. So with this, yeah, I can enter for free in museums, get discount tickets
for 10 years,
and you know, etc. So this is representation because it was created in a gallery and it was created as a symbolic object, but at the same time it has a practical use out of the art world. So in reality, so to speak, you know, and so that's what it's the difference I see between your work and Mendes, who created these fabulous prints, which I love, and were very critical to many issues in Mexican society and beyond, and at the same time were great artworks aesthetically. And but they were conceived and they stay within the art circuit, not having like a practical function.
I'm not sure about that. That's I think why I chose him as an example, because I think he and the other artists that were part of the Taller de Gráfica Popular were at the end generating this cultural impact, and that's, I think, what is difficult in terms of social practice and art, that there is no way to measure how much you impact. So in terms of all this visual production, I think they also had a lot of impact, like for me, for the other generations. And I think if you can contribute in terms of art, you end up impacting culture and then society. So yeah, it's a kind of different media or strategy. But I mean, and that without mentioning that he also took part of publishing and education and organizing political meetings. So I think I understand very well your point about the visual, pure visual production, but I think that's something we can also discuss, no? How much, because that's usually the question, no? If art is really effective in terms, in political or social terms. So I think also those kind of visual productions have an impact. But that's me.
Thank you. I'm feeling that Jota is very anxious here.
No.
So what's your take on this?
I have a lecture about it because this is a mix of both. Technically, Activism is a kind of creation for facilitate the typification of the artists that work in social issues. Typification for the art historian, because now we are a study for people that we make it that, and typification by the market, because it's a new niche. You are the artivist, and essentially we are artists interested in social issues, with a strong social issues sometimes, and from that we arrived at a situation that at the moment, because I say it's a kind of motto I have it, we living in the fear society. People are scary about a lot of stuff. And sometimes, for example, people ask to artists solution that they don't ask to their governance. And it's ridiculous. And it's something that is normal. People ask me to have solutions for stuff in Mexico, and I have ideas, but I say, why you don't ask to your government? And potentially it's possible to utilize the art to visually influence some decision making, or influence or time, or just going to the mass, to the people to react to an image. But for example, when I saw the work of Minerva, because we worked for the first time together in Paris, there was a great show called Hardcore that was very well accepted by the kids, but very bad treated by some critics that said, all these guys are communists, all these guys are, I say one guy, I was communist when I was a teen. Don't tell me that you never saw a communist in your life if you think it. And at the moment now, and we have this kind of regression, that all the people try to have safe pocket and invest in especially in the art market, with the people beginning to have problems with whatever is critic, because it's more compelling to have situations with somebody to try to talk about serial issues, sometimes with something bigger than aesthetics. And it's more easy to just put something and there and say it's my reaction to the community, but it's a wall painting that is more easy to sell in and more easy to protect. And I think of that because I am a collector too. For me, it's only a word that was created. It's like rhythm and blues and country music. It's good music is good music. Good art is good art.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Jota, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about your production process, because you work at such incredible scales. You work with intimate, small pieces that are incredibly crafted. I'm thinking about the ladder with the bread, and then you work on these huge, spectacular performance projects. And I'm just very curious about how you take the work from a kind of conceptual point to actual production, and where you're, because it's so multifaceted in the command of media as well, mediums. So how you manage that? How are you the executive producer? How do you think through the production process?
In any case, I am the same person.
I suspected that.
It's just the size of the intervention that is important. Technically, what I make, and is the past, because I was a poet when I was a young fellow, I try to make it the idea in half page. If after I read the page, I convince myself that it's good enough, I make it. I make the same with the curatorial works. When I make a curatorial project, if the project is good enough for me like an artist, I make it. And I decide to work in a very special way about my productions, or you don't imagine the quantity of problems I have with the market in one moment, because In one moment, I was very wannabe or very fashionable. Some of the pieces become very big, and the people expected that you're going in one direction. And then I am obsessed with the idea of living better. And for me, I make a show in Poland in the National Museum, like a curator, like artist. In each curatorial work, I work like artist too. It's not a problem, it's different size of the stuff. But I make a show I call a Slow Future. Because we're going so fast, and we need to try to go in slowly. No? Like, I don't remember the song of Tina Turner that she say, go slowly and roll. Proud Mary. And easily, the idea is degrowth. We need to, in the future, we all need to be habituated to don't have an entire work. We need to have probably a person. We all know moments of no work. We probably have a lot of different problems in different scales. And I think so the growth is good. You don't imagine when I say to the dealers, I make less work, but I make better. Because technically we are make it in a kind of structure. Art galleries is an 18th century creation, and technically it's the window. And you put it there and you try to sell it. And technically when you're selling something, you put another stuff there. And you say, what a minute, why we don't stop and we expect to sell in the second one? Or if I make this game that I call the pervert pieces, that is play with these guys and say, okay, I show you what you make with the population. You like this piece, but there are only 12 and you are 100. And all the time I playing with that. Now I have a strange relation with power because I have it in one moment. And now when I related with that, I know how to work with these people. I know how to play. And sometimes I am more interested in the economy of a project than in the resolution of the project. Why? Because the economy offers you the necessity, intellectual necessity to be clear. And it's like when I teach, I need to be the most clear possible. And words have a very strong signification. And I try to be the more clear possible. This is the way and sometimes I don't sleep well because I think it's so much in that, but nothing more.
Another question? Comments? Criticism? Praise?
That is
Very kind.
yeah, you are very nice. But art changed so much. No? For example, at the moment I try to create a bank, and I think it's an art piece. And it's very easy. I think so that we need to put it in the human rights now is the access to credit. The problem is that when you are artists, you don't have access to credit. You scare the bankers. And I beginning to work with immigrants, and I helped to create. I was interested in microbanking, and with some teachers, and we decided to work in there potentially. For create a bank in Europe, you need 6 million euros. With 6 million euros, you have the right to create credit, to create credit cards, to offer bank service, only with 6 millions. And in one moment I say that if I create a bank that is not oriented to make money, big money, it's possible to create a solution that offers artists to live in better. People say you are naive, but I make something very, I don't say the names because it's private, but some important artists have problems after divorce to recreate their life. And one day I take the work of a friend and I decide to create a price of all that he make it and don't sell. You know, the quantity of money, say this guy is selling for 20,000, but he don't sell all the time, but he have 100 pieces. and I decide, for example, to a guide, an important guide, all the pieces that you have, that in reality cost, if you died, 25 million now. I'm going to the bank and say, can you give me 1 million? There was also someone to offer to living in Paris, and the bank accept, because I just proved that the potential of all these pieces, that was more important than the real cash, because they ask you 20% of 1 million for buy the house. But I say, look, think like a financial guy and offer the value, the abstract value that we make it easily with numbers. The guy make it the credit immediately. The situation was that I make it 10 times. We make it this procedure in 10 times, 10 different banks agree. Art have a value, artists have a value, but technically they are not valuable because they don't produce money. But if you say they don't produce money, but they produce value in the future, financial people understand.
Okay. Please.
I guess I have a question about the kind of the surrounding and your environment in terms of like you both seem to, like you have individual practices, but also do you work collectively, or how did you find that the work of people around you contributed when you were starting up? And also, I guess now that this thing, I can't ignore like what just happened, and I think it's kind of also shows of working in this field, or in the field of art and activism, the reaction, like you said, you have been, like there were 27 cases that you had to, like how, yeah, dealing with kind of, I guess it takes also a certain power and courage to kind of, like you can't avoid certain responses when you make political work and activist work, and how do you, I guess, how you manage to, I guess, do you use it as fuel or transform it, or how do you, if you do experience negativity in a certain responses, how do you manage to kind of?
Who answered you? No? Okay. When you are like me, you are habituated to feeling some negativities. When I was a young professional, that take me time to understand that, you know, I was so stupid that I go into big schools and I all the time finish first student, and that was not for my pleasure, it was just to prove that I was good enough than the other guys, because they expected that I was there for other reasons, like some foreign people need to be accepted. That was terrible, because that take me time to going out of this kind of situation. And I feel very comfortable with what I make. First, because it's incredible that I arrive to make what I have in my head, visualize what I make it, and sometimes the utility of that. But you know, I was a kid born in the rainforest of Peru, in a place that is in the map only for the last 45 years. I have 49. This place, I was one day transformed because I saw a terrible picture of artwork made by Pistoletto that was sent to Italian immigrants in a magazine called ANSA, and there was an article that said that, look, it's a shame this guy, to the name Michelangelo, he makes his first show in Torino. It's a shame that he make art, but it's so bad that potentially it's the first and the last show of this guy. When I saw the piece, that actually was something that Felix González Torres copied after, they called Quadro de Fili Elettrici. The kid I was 5, I decided that was my life. Try to think it all the time about the future and work in anticipation. You know, I think that we need to preserve humanity and take care of her, but in the better way, improve humanity, and just try to work in this direction. I don't feel frustration. For example, this kind of aggression about my English, I say I speak 12 languages. Try to make it.
Minerva, you know, I want you to comment about an aspect of your work that I really like very much, but could be like polemic, which is that some of your pieces are illegal.
Yeah.
So perhaps here we are in Canada, where you know the weight of law is such an ordered country, and you know how do you tap that?
Yeah. Well, I never take that as the parting point. I never think if it's legal or illegal what I have in mind, but sometimes even things that I don't consider could be legal ended up being illegal. Like I was at the BAM Center for a project, and I decided to use the phrase not impressed by civilization, that is taken by from a Sitting Bull quote when he talks about land and him not needing or wanting any of the white man situation. So I wanted to use that phrase, not impressed by civilization, as an action, and I decided to go and sleep one night in the forest. And I didn't know that was illegal in the BAM Center because it's a natural forest, protected, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes it just happens, no? It's like, okay, that was forbidden. But it also surprises me a lot that we are also much used to question the actions of an individual, and we are kind of trained to oversee the corporate action. No? Maybe I'm changing one barcode and the supermarket is losing $1 or $2, but why we don't evaluate what's this supermarket doing to the original producers and all the millions, and how criminal is that? I mean, we are talking about sometimes even genocide in the case of Del Monte. No? At some point they had 40% of all the services of Guatemala, and the human exploitation is really important. No? So yeah, I never think about if it's legal or illegal, and well,
It's a good move.
I think that we have time for a couple of questions more. Yes, please, the gentleman over there. Wait for the mic, please.
Everybody can hear me, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's in Minerva's, I haven't seen so much of your work, but Minerva's work, I've seen some of your work in museums, and I feel that sometimes it's much more successful for me anyway if you're creating your own sort of parallel means of distribution, or your parallel institution that's a parody of institutions or a parody of corporations, where you're completely, where you're creating this other structure instead of being, instead of involving your practice in a museum where it can sometimes be cannibalized by the museum.
I like the word cannibalized, because I'm researching that at the moment very much. So it's great you use it. Well, the thing is that I'm usually in both spaces, also the institutional one, but I also think it's a privilege to be inside museum and gallery spaces, because there is this dedicated audience that goes there with their senses, their 5, 6 senses, to absorb content. And for me, that's really valuable. I even at some point think they are also public spaces. In the case of something like Better Life Corporation, it's like just expanding the business. It's like, okay, I'm capable of producing these student ID cards, and people keep asking to get them. But if it's shown in a museum space, like in the opening, we made 50 because that was the time. It was because of the time we had to make them, no? So it's 50 one day, that's great, no? It's like a branch of Better Life Corporation that doesn't stop these other activities. It's true that sometimes the institutional or administrative part of being engaged in this other situation is heavy, and I think you can, it could have repercussions in the work, but I think I still feel free to come inside and go outside, and yeah, it's just that, I think.
Well, I'm afraid that we have to wrap up at this point, and thank you very much, Minerva, thank you very much, Jota, and I want to finish just reading two very brief quotes. The first one is by Tania Bruguera, to whom, Jota was referring in his presentation. So I quote Tania Bruguera here. I establish a difference in art between representing what is political and acting politically. Political art is the one that works on the consequences of its existence, of its interactions, and does not remain in the level of association or graphic memory. It is intervening in the process that is created after people think the art experience is over. Political art is the one transcending the field of art, entering the daily nature of power. I do believe that a political action from within the system of art may overcome representation. But the problem is for how long and with what level of deterioration. And now, well, the last quote is by Francis Alice, and is sometimes you do something political and it becomes poetic. Sometimes you do something poetic and it becomes political. Thank you very much.